Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is our chess show on IBM TV. My name is Sasha Star, and although it's a chess program, but lately we're discussing more and more politics because it's too difficult to concentrate in a game of chess without discussing politics, especially now when a lot of, for example, Ukrainian grandmasters refuse to play in tournaments when Russian and Belarusian chess players are participating. And now, without further ado, I would like to introduce my esteemed collaborators to the program. First of all, Professor Ken Regan, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me on again.
As always, Ken. And now I would like to invite international arbiter, Mr. Vadim Tsipin from Montreal. Welcome to the show, Vadim.
Thank you, Sasha. Hello, Ken.
Yes.
Great to see you. So the latest move was by Grandmaster Elyanov from Ukraine, who was at one point he was in top 10 in the world. He refused to play in this European Championship on the grounds that he cannot participate and play against Russian and Belarusian grandmasters. So how would you comment on that?
Well, what I just did is, in fact, there are 40 players from Ukraine playing in the European individual. That's what I show with my hands. A really remarkable turnout, including at least one, maybe two, promising young players. Vladislav Garsky being one of them, a 13-year-old kid who is drawn several 2,500 level players in his opening rounds. So it's a robust participation even without Grandmaster Elyanov. There are also a few Russians in the event. I think there's a statement on the European Championship website saying that Russian and Belarusian players had withdrawn, but that's not the case with all of them. Olga Dorjieva is there. She's one of the few female participants because this is the European Open Championship. And there's someone named Dubin. I have to look exactly at the level. I think there are three. There are three players on FIDE flags in any event. So there are a handful, and the rules of the tournament are that no Ukrainian may be paired against a Russian, but with only a few Russians, it's not going to be too hard to comply with. So, Gleb Dudin is the player.
I see.
And let's see, I think there's a third. I'm looking over the list.
And again, there's upcoming team championship, I think European team championship, and Poland already announced that they're not going to participate if Russian and Belarusian teams will be played. How is that going to be played out?
Who announced that? I didn't hear you.
Poland.
Yeah. Okay. That could be. And I was going to say, there are no British players at the European individual. So I don't know if that was, I was trying to check that, whether that was by policy or not.
Mm-hmm.
Grandmaster Nestorov is the third Russian player that I was trying to remember.
Mm-hmm. So basically, they're second-rated Russian players. They're not
right. That's right.
The top players.
Yeah, just a handful.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There are a couple. There's Yakimenko and there's let's see, Alyankin. Again, these international master. And so 5, I guess.
So what, with the second-rated players, what would happen if they would be all basically forbidden to play in these tournaments while the war is raging on? It seems to me that the policy of FIDE now is that the war is a temporary event, and once it will be done and over with, then we're all back to normal. Is it something what you feel happening?
I don't think I can speculate on what they think about it. So, it seems to have war seems to have gone into a completely a phase where the definition of time has changed.
Mhm.
So, so if you want to say chess and war, we can talk about whether Russia is now trying to carry out Nimzovich's strategy of overprotecting the South without advancing.
I see.
Um,
Okay. William, what are your thoughts on further participation of Russian and Belarusian players in both individual and team tournaments? Does it make any sense at all, or what do you think?
As this war of aggression continues, we shouldn't lose track of the fact that every day there are people who are being killed, innocent civilians, women, children, and the suffering of the Ukrainian people is enormous. According to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, more than 4 million people are already displaced, either internally or externally. They became refugees. And the dehumanization on both sides, the longer the conflict continues, the more cruel and the more ferocious it becomes,
Right.
obviously. And people do not see their adversaries for the human beings they are. They see them as representatives of the
Nazis.
exactly of the power that came to invade, rape, and pillage their country. And everyone decides for himself, I believe. Every Grandmaster Ilyanov is definitely entitled to his opinions. People who entered the championship and decided to beat the Russians, so to say, in their game and to prevail over the chessboard are entitled to their opinions. I would like to bring to your attention the words that were spoken by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in a recent interview that he gave to the independent media of the Russian Federation, of
Yes.
the country that invaded his country. He proved himself a human being, a person who really hurts and feels the pain of his people. And he was not scripted, he was not polished, he was genuine, he was authentic. And one of these authentic answers that I would like to remind you came when he was asked about the so-called boycott of the Russian players internationally. And what he said, I don't have an exact quote right now because it was not in English, but I would paraphrase. What he said is that for the life of you, you cannot feel the pain that we are feeling here when the bombs and missiles are falling on our houses. But at least you should feel some discomfort. And maybe you would understand that your government has made you an outcast. Your government that unleashed this war that was ultimately condemned by the international community has made you an outcast. So he says that it's through this boycott or measures or sanctions or steps that people would start to feel that they were used as a tool that was buttressing the international prestige of their country. And I think it's a very important message because we all know that totalitarian regimes through the history were using sports as a tool to show their power, show their might. We can remember the 1936 Olympics in the Fourth Reich, of course. We can remember the 2014 Olympics. Right, so I think there is a message that we all have to think about.
Yeah, there is something else. What's happening here is that there are from time to time there are peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia. Now, Russia doesn't send highly placed people in the government system. Right now, the top negotiator is Mr. Medinsky, who is a minister of culture, which is a very low position in the Russian government. All this works. And it seems to me that Russians are not really conducting genuine peace negotiations. This is for them a tactic to, first of all, show to the world that they're open to discuss peace, and they have meetings, they discuss peace. But how you can picture the negotiations? Let's say, for example, you are in a business meeting and you're negotiating terms of, let's say, selling your business. And however, at the same time, there is a gun right into your head. Can you continue to negotiate if you're a sane person with a gun to your head? Probably not.
Yeah.
So I think that this negotiations is a distraction because Ukrainians and Zelensky, in my opinion, shows how little he understands Putin's motives. And Putin's motive is a complete capitulation of Ukraine. That is his goal. Anything less than that is not going to work out, unfortunately. So if that's the case, so what Zelensky, let's say he meets Putin, what he can do there, something what has not been done so far. What do you think, Ken?
Well, that's what I was about to say about Putin's objective. Actually, I think Brett Stephens of the New York Times wrote an article yesterday saying, be careful, because in fact, a situation where Putin negotiates a stop to the war and gets to hang on to Donbass and Luhansk and Crimea is something that he would regard as a win. That is not so much the case that he's miscalculated. So you might be right that what you just said was Putin's aspiration, but in terms of his realpolitik, Brett Stephens was saying that Putin really hasn't lost his realpolitik sense as much as we think. Let me see if I can find this article. Let's see, search for Stephens. So it's sort of the opposite. Let's see now. Oops. Latest. Let's see now. No. You know what? My global Google is better.
Vadim, what do you think in the meantime about this?
I am confident that the Ukrainian political leadership, as well as Ukrainian military, know too well that they cannot trust any single word that comes from the Russian Federation. They've been taught very hard and painful lessons starting from the Budapest Memorandum and all other diplomatic relationship. And many people do not understand that Russia and Ukraine signed at least 2 intergovernmental treaties where they recognize territorial integrity and sovereignty of each other. It was under Presidents Yeltsin and Putin, and under Presidents, I believe, Kuchma and Yushchenko. So Russia technically recognized Ukraine in the borders of 1999. And of course, then it ripped this treaty and annexed Crimea in 2014. And now it attacked the other territories of Ukraine. So I'm sure that people who are negotiating are driven by a very noble desire to save at least 10 more lives, 15 more lives, 20 more lives. And we can definitely see that on the other side, there is no goodwill. Exactly as you said, Sasha. How do you negotiate in good faith if you continue to bomb the outskirts of Kiev? If you understood that you cannot take Mykolaiv and you put a missile through the central administration building, killing at least 20 people, right? So the deeds speak louder than the words.
Yeah. Ken, did you find it?
Yes, I found it. So I'll share
Okay,
screen
go
and
ahead.
show you the article. So the article is this one 2 days ago in the Times. What if Putin didn't miscalculate? And so, conventional wisdom is that he catastrophically miscalculate who's advising him. That may all be right, but conventional wisdom is gives the conclusion that the best outcome is one in which Putin finds some face-saving exit, additional Ukrainian territory, Ukrainian pledge neutrality, a lifting of some of the sanctions. And he basically says that's what Putin wanted all along. And this is what Putin did in Chechnya. So it says Russia's operating the same playbook today. So, he can't win clean. So when has Putin ever played clean? Just as you said, he's not playing clean right now, that's for sure. Suppose Putin never intended to conquer all of Ukraine, that from the beginning, his real targets were the energy riches of Ukraine's east. Okay. And the shape of Putin's ambitions become clear. He's less interested in reuniting the Russian-speaking world than in securing Russia's energy dominance. Now, I don't think I agree with this point. I don't think Russia's economy is big enough to have energy dominance. So that's the first part where I disagree with this article. But in any event, this is the best case picture. And then he also says it also makes sense of his strategy of targeting civilians, more than simply a way of compensating for the incompetence of Russian troops. This puts immense pressure on Zelensky to agree to the very things Putin has demanded all along: territorial concessions and Ukrainian neutrality. When Putin did begin by saying that recognizing Donetsk and Luhansk were the first two objectives of it, he's convinced the West will look for a play of de-escalate. And then within Russia, the war has already served Putin's political purposes. A lot of his opponents in the next levels have been scattered. Remnants of a free press shuttered. Novaya Gazeta stopped publishing. Christo Grozev thinks that's for good. Is that in any event, war, politics, and life always wise you to treat your adversary as a canny fox, not a crazy fool. Well, that's the most maybe Putin realist version of telling the story. And then, as said, the one chess and war analogy we can make is it does seem that it's important that Ukraine kept Kharkiv, because for Russia to redeploy from north to east now takes a lot longer. Can't go through Kharkiv. And but it may be that Russia is developing a strategy of overprotecting where it's made gains, and that will, clarify that its aims are those that Brett Stephens states in his article.
Okay, Ken, if we are going that deep, then I must say the following. Number one, it's complete failure of U.S. intelligence community, same as what's happened in 1962 with Cuban crisis. Kennedy was advised that Russia has at least 1,000 warheads. When the crisis was over, you know how many warheads Russia had at the time? 2.
Oh.
Can you imagine the mistake in calculating here is 1,000, and in reality there is only 2.
That's all that Khrushchev had was 2 warheads in Cuba?
They didn't have any warheads in Cuba. They had only rockets. They
never
never even tried because they didn't have any. But the rockets, yes, they were trying to. So that was a complete failure of American intelligence. But even more failure happened now before this Ukrainian crisis. The mistake was enormous mistake was of U.S. intelligence that they grossly overestimated the power of Russian army.
Yes.
Grossly, it's
Everyone
just
did.
not
Yes.
there. Number two mistake, he grossly undervalued and underestimated the real strength of the Ukrainian army. So because of that, if you remember, there was a trip of Burns, which is the right hand of Biden in matters of Russia. He speaks Russian. He was ambassador in Russia at one point. So he knows the subject quite well. He traveled there at the end of October. Nothing was really revealed what happened during these negotiations. However, what happened shortly after that, there was a U.S. Uh, all media started to talk about the great build-up of Russian army on the borders of Ukraine, and this is such a danger. And even Zelensky at that time pointed that, sorry, why do we do that? You just spoke our investment communities, normal people, and so on. It's not that great thing for us. We know how to deal with that if needed. No, you don't understand. So on and on and on and on. And it was built up. Now there is only 3 days before the war starts. There's 5 days before. It tells me, it's my own opinion. If you disagree with that, I'm just fine. My own opinion was that this is a reason why U.S. didn't really supply Ukraine with all needed arms, because they thought that Ukraine will fall out in 3 days. And if that's the case, why do we need to send them any arms, right?
Right. Yeah.
This is number one. And number two, there was some kind of a deal arranged with Burns' trip to Moscow that essentially when Biden was 5 times every day were saying that no NATO soldiers, no US soldiers will fight in Ukraine. So essentially he was inviting and he was confirming to Putin, you have a free hand, my friend, go in, do whatever you need to do, take whatever you want to take. Maybe they arrange some help in Iranian matters and maybe some other stuff as a compensation for doing that. But that's my opinion. My opinion, nobody else's. But comes the fight, comes February 24, February 25, February 26, and 27, and so on. And Russian army proved it's an impotent army. They have a huge amount of superiority in the air, the heavy artillery, just two subjects, nothing else. So unfortunately, whatever now is being done, now they recognize Ukraine actually can fight. Whatever comes the Ukrainian way, in my opinion, is too little, too late. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think, Vadim?
I would like to come back to something that you said, Sasha, and make a distinction a little bit between military analytics that was done in the US and the operational intelligence. Because operational intelligence, as you just said yourself, was extremely good. We saw this public announcement and pronouncements and predictions of how the war will start and when it will start that proved essentially impeccable. And as we know, yesterday, the head of French foreign intelligence had to resign, and the charge on him was that compared to the US intelligence, France completely failed to predict the date and the scope and the plan of attack. But the part about the state of the Russian army, I think, is the same mistakes that many Sovietologists made in 1970s and the 1980s, when people had to rely on the former Soviet statistical reports that proclaimed that X thousand tons of steel were produced by the Soviet Union, or Y thousand tons of cast iron were produced, and so the Soviet Union was the second mightiest superpower in the world, and with its tentacles going to Africa, South America, Asia, everywhere. So people in Washington believed these statistical reports without really understanding that this colossus had clay feet. So a parallel can be made with the state of a Russian army, where according to all the reports that are coming up to the Minister of Defense and higher-ups, everything is peachy, and all detachments are fully equipped, and the soldiers are fed, and conscripts are trained, whereas this doesn't bear any resemblance to the reality. So, of course, it's the heroic battle of the Ukrainian people, their morale, and their tenacity in defending their country that scuttled initial Russian plans, but also, as you justly said, the underestimation of the seriousness of the fundamental problems that Russian army seemed to have inherited from the Russian society.
Yeah.
And of course, don't forget about the giant corruption in the Russian army. In fact, I just heard very interesting news that the main supporter or even initiator of the war with Ukraine was nobody else but Mr. Shoigu himself. Why did he need this war? Because there were so much absolutely incredible corruption and so much was stolen from the army that he needed that all that could be covered only through war, because in the war you can do all this mathematical calculations and you can justify almost anything, that something was burned, something was destroyed, something was else, something else. But the biggest the sign of Russian corruption is simply this: when they were discussing participation of Syrian fighters, 16,000 Syrian fighters were ready to go, but they were fighting in Syria. They fight in sandals. So now they had to. They needed the army boots, say 2 pairs. It means 32,000 pairs of military shoes for this Syrian fighters. So they made the request for the Russian supply stuff, and in 2 days they came the answer: sorry, we have supplies only for 800 soldiers, not 16,000. Okay, so what's happened with the other shoes? Were they all stolen, sold, appropriated, misappropriated? And this is just to start with, and we'll see what's going to happen next. My opinion is, unfortunately, that in order really to get to a peace, real peace negotiations, either Russian or Ukrainian army has to have a decisive breakthrough,
Right.
which will make the other side next to impossible to continue the war. And who's going to be that? Hopefully Ukraine. Slava Ukraine. And we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Ukraine. Yep. Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us. Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.